We now know which 40 airports are going to be impacted by the FAA's decision to reduce flight capacity by 10% starting tomorrow, Friday, November 7th. This is absolutely going to cause delays and cancellations and chaos.
They're literally sounding the alarm here at Sky Harbor for something, but it's an apt metaphor for what's going on across the nation's airspace. Controllers unpaid, under pressure, stressed and fatigued, prompting the FAA to order airlines to cut flights. It starts at 4%, builds to 10% into the nation's 40 busiest airports, and it starts now.
It's over.
You're looking at massive lines at Houston's main airport. Just one more sign. The government shutdown is making air travel especially frustrating right now. Houston George Bush Intercontinental Airport is telling passengers that TSA checkpoint lines could stretch 3 hours.
They're literally sounding the alarm here at Sky Harbor for something, but it's an apt metaphor for what's going on across the nation's airspace. Controllers unpaid, under pressure, stressed and fatigued, prompting the FAA to order airlines to cut flights. It starts at 4%, builds to 10% into the nation's 40 busiest airports, and it starts now. With thousands of flights set to be canceled at airports across the country this weekend, traveler frustration over the government shutdown and its impact is mounting.
It's going to probably increase flight times. It's going to increase flight prices.
Republicans, Democrats come together, find a little of reason.
Cancel some travel next month and choosing to drive based on that so that won't have any issues.
And it appears many Americans are making backup plans to hit the road. Hertz reporting one-way rental reservations for this weekend are up 20% compared to last year at this time. It comes as airlines were told to cut flights at 40 high-volume travel hubs, including Atlanta, Dallas, Denver, Chicago, Los Angeles, and all 3 major New York City area airports.
We're trying to be as transparent as we can.
David Kinzelman is United Airlines Chief Customer Officer. He says the company expects to cut nearly 200 flights a day this weekend.
The good news here is this isn't coming at a time when we have high volumes. It's not peak summer travel. It's not holidays. So we feel really comfortable that we will have availability across the system to be able to accommodate customers on other flights.
The Air Traffic Controllers Union says the nation was thousands of controllers short before the shutdown. Now many existing controllers are calling out sick, some even quitting after having gone weeks without pay and receiving a second $0 pay stub Thursday.
They're worried about putting gas in their car. They're worried about putting food on the table. They can't even pay for childcare in some instances. So as that risk increases, you have to begin reducing the capacity of the system.
And this emergency order will impact commercial flights, cargo flights, even private jet flights and space launches. Airlines found to be in violation could face significant fines, $75,000 per flight over the limit.
Popular Monster 23 says, stop paying all of Congress instead of the workers that need the money, and the shutdown will end immediately. God forbid rich politicians don't get paid instead. One of the best ways to make sure that the system continues to work properly is to have checks and balances in place such that those in leadership, positions of power, politics, are held accountable and are at risk of losing their livelihood if they do not operate their positions efficiently and effectively. I think that making sure they do not get paid is one of the ways that you can do that. Jennifer replied saying, they tried to pass a bill to do that, but it was blocked. How can the vote to stop pay have to go to the people we don't want to get paid? Should have gone to a judge. Naturally, anybody who wants to continue their position and continue to be paid are going to elect that they do. Nobody in that position is going to say, well, I don't want to put food on my family's table. I don't want to be able to live in my house. I don't want to be able to go grocery shop for my family. And so naturally, they're going to vote for themselves to be paid, and they're going to block any position that would say otherwise. And that is exactly what happened. Popular Monster replied by saying, exactly. Of course, they won't vote on not getting paid. The people and taxpayers should vote on that because we're the ones affected. And I think that is indicative of what needs to be changed in the system. And it also shows how ruthless and tyrannical people within the American government can be if given the opportunity. Let's continue with the video.
This morning, travelers feeling turbulence coast to coast as the FAA cancels hundreds of flights at 40 major airports because of the government shutdown.
Everybody's suffering in the country because of the shutdown.
More than 800 flights already canceled this morning. Frustration mounting.
It affects your money, your expenses, and that's tough.
Would you be open to getting a backup ticket?
You got to have backup money. I don't have that.
Some travelers who were notified of flight cancellations now opting to cancel their trip altogether instead of rebooking.
I don't know when all this is going to, end.
The 40 airports impacted, including the country's busiest, from Atlanta to Los Angeles, Chicago, New York, Boston, and Miami. Airlines told to reduce flights by 4% today, ramping up to 10% over the next several days. American canceling around 220 daily flights, Delta canceling 170, and United canceling just under 200 per day.
If you're in a market with only 2 small regional flights and you cancel one or both of them, that's a huge impact to that market. We want to avoid that. And so what we're doing is really spreading it around the system.
The Trump administration says they're trying to ease the strain on 13,000 air traffic controllers, but some critics argue it's just a move to pressure Democrats to reopen the government as the shutdown reaches day 38. This as more than 60,000 TSA agents are also working without pay. These essential workers forced to decide if they can even afford to keep showing up on the job.
This is the little bit that is in here. This is enough to hold over for maybe another week. The fridge is pretty much empty.
Maggie Sabatino is a lead TSA agent in Philadelphia and a mother of 2.
We were told if you call in sick, you have to provide medical documentation. When I call out, I tell them the truth. Can't afford childcare.
So you can see the impact here. The airlines say for passengers who are going to experience a canceled flight, they hope to be able to notify them a day in advance and then rebook them on another flight. For passengers who do not want to be rebooked, they are entitled to a full cash refund.
Elise says it's concerning to see the impact the government shutdown is having on air travel. With hundreds of flights being canceled and flight capacity limited, the gradual reduction in service for safety is necessary, but it will definitely cause disruptions for both travelers and airport staff. Let's hope the situation gets resolved quickly. We should note the inadequacies in how this situation is being handled. Government workers en masse are experiencing a lack of ability to provide for them and their families, and I think that that is completely wrong, especially considering that the people who are making these decisions for them are still being paid themselves. Now, in regards to flights being canceled and, of course, there being a gradual reduction for the service and safety, as Elise stated, I can understand that. We do not want people being in the sky without proper guidance, without proper determinism coming from air traffic controllers, especially considering that many of them are taking off work, many of them are quitting because they are not getting paid. And so it is necessary that those adjustments be made. But I do want people to take a moment to understand the kind of impact that this can have in regards to the holidays, given that transportation is ramping up. I know in the first video, the gentleman was stating that the holiday traffic is actually not ramping up. I don't know what he means by that. People are traveling for Thanksgiving. People are planning travel for Christmas. And these are the kinds of things that you have to think about, the suggestions, the implications behind all of these travel disruptions. I wonder how it's going to have an effect on the overall market.
These government shutdowns got the airlines tore up. If you a felon, it's your chance. Go see the world. Bro, well, I just pulled up to the airline, right? And I forgot my real ID. Because usually I just use my passport for that, and I forgot my passport. So, like, I try to show my driver's license. They're like, nah, buddy, that's not going to cut it. You're going to need to, like, do an additional screen or whatever like that, right? But we in TSA pre-check. So, like, I go through the pre-check line. I stand off to the side, you know, where they be checking your bags and stuff. And I'm just chilling there for a minute. Nobody come up to me. So I see this young boy. He like 18, 19. I'm like, yo, what's up, bro? Like, you know what I'm saying? But he a TSA worker, right? So I'm like, hey, bro, like, can you help me get this additional screening? You know, I'm trying to catch my flight. He like, bro, I'm a temp worker. I ain't gonna lie, I don't even know how to do no screenings. So just like that, right? So I'm like, all right, well, you know, but he looked to the dude on his left. He like, hey, bro, can you do a screening right now? Bro, like, nah, I can't. He looked to the dude on the right. He like, you can do a screening right now? He like, nah, I can't. He like, all right, bro, I'm just go on then. Like, I can't do nothing for you. I'm like, are you sure, bro? Like, this, you know, this is an airport. I don't play about the airport. It's the one place I don't play. He like, should we be worried about you? I'm like, nah, I'm chilling. I just don't want to play by no airport. You know what I'm saying? You don't want to do a quick little pat down or something like that. he like, bro, where are you going? You in such a rush to get to? I'm like, Atlanta. He like, yeah, bro, I'm definitely not giving you that pat down. Oh, this is giving me bronchitis. But bro, I didn't even have a cough. Oh my God, everybody on my flight about to be scared. But nah, bro, the thing that's killing me is that means nobody ever checked my ID. And I'm absolutely in the terminal about to get on this plane. I could be anybody.
And this is a problem that we're going to see across American airports, that people are simply not going to take the job seriously. Why would they? They're not getting paid. Of course, you can make the argument that it's all about the safety of the individuals, the passengers on the plane, the safety of the airline, and even the destination that they're trying to make it to. But overall, people are overwhelmingly self-interested. It's very idealistic to think that everyone has the same care for humanity as, say, you and I. And so we have to consider that when we're looking at the employees. You have to understand they're not able to provide for their families. They're not able to provide for their households. There are individuals that are going to work without being paid and still have to drop their daughters and sons off at school. And so when you take all of that into account, the question has to be raised, who cares about them? Who cares about their humanity? Who cares about how they feel in their day-to-day life? Because obviously that care, that concern is not being reciprocated. So in regards to the government shutdown, that is why it is very important to make sure that we move swiftly and we move efficiently to make sure that we get things back in order such that these workers feel appreciated enough to perform their job at the degree that they're supposed to. I don't blame the man for not wanting to necessarily fulfill the role. I don't blame the rest of the TSA workers to pretend as if they're all busy, too busy to do their jobs properly. We've been through TSA. We know the vast majority of them are just sitting there screaming at people, telling them to put their stuff in their bags or take their stuff out of their bags or what have you. We know that they're not too busy to perform a quick 10-15 second pat down, but none of them are getting paid. So of course they're going to just wave you off and say, well, go on about your day, because there's no incentive for them to care. Similar how there's no incentive for those politicians to care to make sure that they're getting paid in the first place. But let's continue with the video.
A pay stub for an air traffic controller showing Tuesday's check will be for $0. It's why controller Jack Chris spends his days off driving DoorDash.
You're not getting a tip.
The single dad is trying to make some extra money to help cover the cost of his daughter's high school tuition. How stressful is life right now with this shutdown?
Yeah, man. It's been incredibly difficult. You can feel the tension, and it's heavy, and it hurts.
As the government shutdown rolls into its 25th day, Congress remains unable to make a deal.
She tipped $2 this year.
Chris says he's tapped his retirement funds and taken out a high-interest short-term loan to make sure he has the cash to weather a long shutdown. From the standpoint of a single working dad, how is all of this impacting life at home?
That's a great question. It's hard enough just going to work. Now when you add in not getting paid, that's when you just like multiply the level of pressure. Air traffic is a safety sensitive position. The margin of error is zero. So if you think about it, it's pressure on top of pressure when you don't know exactly when you'll get paid based on politics.
The Department of Transportation says it's continued to see an increased number of sick calls from controllers, leading to spotty staffing shortages.
Well, I don't want my air traffic controllers to take a second job, but they're having to make decisions about how they spend their time to make sure they put food on their table, feed their kids, and support their family members.
Define says, by the way, being an air traffic controller is an extremely selective program that requires rigorous training and has a high turnover rate because of how stressful it can be. John Oliver did a great segment on it, so the fact that they're now not being paid is terrible and also dangerous for flyers. I could only imagine the amount of stress that air traffic controllers are under, considering the amount of communication skills that they have to have, interacting with different planes coming in and coming out, in addition to interacting with different controllers at their station. I have an article by skybrary.aero that talks about that, and we'll get into that right now. Air traffic control is a highly demanding job which requires high levels of responsibility with inherent stress due to its nature and the complexity of tasks involved. Just like the flight crews who work in an intensive, stressful environment, air traffic controllers are considered the aviation professionals who face very high levels of stress. The air traffic controller must constantly reorganize and adapt his or her system of processing information, often done under time deficit, by changing operating methods, in particular cognitive processes, conversation, coordinating with other controllers, assistance, anticipation, and solving problems as they arise and interact with each other. This is carried out by means of the precise and effective application of rules and procedures that need to be quickly selected and applied according to differing circumstances. It is evident that the job entails, on the whole, high psychological demands while being subjected to a considerable degree of external control. So as we see, air traffic control is not a simple job. It is not a task or a occupation that anybody can pick up and do. This is a very important and critical part of the system of aviation that allows the system to operate properly. And as that pertains to the government shutdown, with all of the air traffic controllers leaving their jobs, not coming in for work, is going to significantly impact how Americans fly and impact the future as it pertains to people's job security regarding the government. And so I think that these are all things that everyone needs to think about in regards to how the United States government decides to handle issues like this moving forward.
We now know which 40 airports are going to be impacted by the FAA's decision to reduce flight capacity by 10% starting tomorrow, Friday, November 7th. This is absolutely going to cause delays and cancellations and chaos. And not just the airports I'm going to show you, but at other airports too that are trying to pick up the slack. So brace yourself for a real dumpster fire out there. Here is the preliminary list. Now, this can still change, but for now, you can see these are considered some of the biggest and busiest airports in the country. We're talking LAX in California, Hartsfield-Jackson in Atlanta, O'Hare in Chicago. Notably, take a look at the Maryland and Virginia airports. Baltimore Washington International, Washington Dulles, and Reagan are some of the main airports that members of the U.S. House of Representatives and U.S. Senate use to fly in and out of Washington, D.C. So they are absolutely going to be feeling this too. It's important for you to know that if this government shutdown stretches into next week, the Trump administration is saying the list of airports can expand, and they're not afraid to cut even more flight capacity. So this is only going to get worse. And don't forget, this doesn't just impact passenger travel. It will also impact the air travel of cargo. So if you have a package on the way, that may also be delayed. Of course, as I reported yesterday, this is all happening because of the government shutdown and because air traffic controllers are not getting a paycheck. So they are calling out sick because they can't pay to have someone come and watch their kids, or they need to work another job to pay their bills. And the controllers who are showing up to work, according to the Transportation Secretary, are working these crazy long hours. And all of that is putting enormous pressure on the system. Just moments ago, President Trump addressed all of this.
Sir, that the FAA is going to have to cut about 10% of flights at the top 40 airports because of the government shutdown. Are you at all concerned that it might not be safe to fly right now? And what do you tell people who are gearing up for
that's why
Thanksgiving?
they're cutting. Yeah, fair question. As Sean Duffy announced, they're cutting in certain areas 10%, and they want to make sure it's 100% safe. That's why they're doing it.
Now, if you're supposed to be traveling tomorrow or anytime this weekend, I highly suggest you contact your airline. Some of them are offering preemptive free cancellations or refunds, but this is going to be on you to make sure you can get to your destination and then get back home.
User 61 says, this will definitely cause a lot of disruptions for travelers. It's good to see the FAA being proactive, but the impact on these major airports could be significant. Hopefully, they have a solid plan in place to minimize the delays. According to ABC News, roughly 10% of U.S. cargo is delivered by plane. Varun Gupta, a professor of logistics and business analytics at the University of North Georgia, told ABC News, noting the proportion could vary during the holiday rush. passenger flights sometimes carry cargo, putting deliveries at risk in the event of commercial airline disruptions. Some products rely on air transport for a larger share of deliveries, including electronics, medications, and legal documents, Gupta added. I definitely see there being delays, Gupta said. The crunch could be especially impactful for gift buyers who procrastinate, leaving them more likely to depend on rapid delivery flights. Dale Rogers, a professor of supply chain management at Arizona State University, told ABC News, there's a large percentage of holiday deadline shopping that travels on airplanes, Rogers said. So as we see, these kinds of delays can have significant impacts on people, their transportation, and the packages that people need to live their day-to-day lives, not to mention the fact that holidays are approaching. So, one of the things that they talked about in that article was the fact that there are those who have medication that needs to travel by airline. They have medical issues that need to be considered, and now people are suffering all across America who cannot get their meds on time to deal with any health condition that they may have. All of these implications are implications that need to be taken into account by the politicians, and this is why they need to come to a resolution and come to it quickly. Not to mention, again, holidays are approaching. So people aren't going to be able to get gifts on time. They aren't going to be able to enjoy these happy, delightful moments that you're supposed to enjoy with your family and friends and loved ones. Imagine the kind of impact that could have on the economy. These are the kinds of things that we have to think about as this government shutdown proceeds. Let's continue with the video.
You're looking at massive lines at Houston's main airport. Just one more sign. The government shutdown is making air travel especially frustrating right now. Houston George Bush Intercontinental Airport is telling passengers that TSA checkpoint lines could stretch 3 hours. The problem is TSA security officers are not getting paid during this government shutdown. Air traffic controllers are also in the same boat, and this past weekend was the worst for controller staffing since the shutdown began. 16,000 flight delays Friday to Sunday. This is the massive list of air traffic control facilities that had low staff on Friday. The FAA says 80% of New York controllers called out that day. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy says staff shortages will get worse before they get better.
We hit. It's over with. Time to get on the flight. I'm just trying to go through that way. That way. Atlanta, Georgia.
How can you expect people to care to come and do their job, to care and come do work, when they aren't being considered at home, given that they're not being paid to take care of their household? They're not even being paid to have transportation to come to work. So how can you expect them to come and perform well? It's just ludicrous. Furthermore, I wanted to talk about something I've seen in many comment sections as I was doing research for this video. The primary thing that I've seen is people referring to strikes and how air traffic controllers and overall people that work for the government in particular within the airport should take a strike, should take a leave and decide not to work such that they can make a statement to the United States government and they can get these kinds of different policies pushed through so that they no longer have to suffer. This led me down a rabbit hole in which I found out about the strike that was posed by air traffic controllers specifically during the Ronald Reagan era, might I say. This brings me to the air traffic controller strike of 1981, where air traffic controllers decided to strike for better working conditions under the reign of no good Ronald Reagan. According to UTA Libraries, 40 years ago in August 1981, over 12,000 members of the Professional Air Traffic Controllers Organization, PATCO, walked off the job after contract negotiations with the Federal Aviation Administration broke down. President Ronald Reagan ordered them to return to work and after 48 hours fired those who did not. In observance of Labor Day, this blog post commemorates the 40th anniversary of the PATCO strike and explores its legacy and impact on the modern American labor movement. PATCO began contract negotiations with the FAA in February 1981. Its main goals were a 32-hour work week, a $10,000 raise for all its members, and a better retirement package. At the time, PATCO members were making between $20,000 and $50,000 a year. In total, the value of the package that PATCO sought was $770 million, and their union rejected a counteroffer the FAA made that was worth $40 million in total. PATCO was also concerned about on-the-job stress for its members, as it reported that 89% of those who left air traffic controller jobs in 1981 were either retiring early and seeking medical benefits or leaving the profession entirely. On August 3, 1981, the majority of PATCO members went on strike, breaking a 1955 law that banned government employees from striking that had never previously been enforced. This law, which was upheld by the Supreme Court in 1971, allowed for punishments including fines and up to 1 year of jail time. However, while the law was on the books, a gentleman's agreement had effectively been in place that prevented the firing of striking workers, which led to no postal workers being fired during a strike in 1970. Reagan ordered the PATCO strikers back to work within 48 hours and declared the strike a peril to national safety. He also ominously decreed that there would be no negotiations and no amnesty. The Reagan administration additionally arrested a handful of PATCO leaders. Writing in the New Yorker University professor and son of a PATCO member, Gregory Pardlow, argued that Reagan treated the strike as a challenge to his authority. On August 5, 1981, Reagan fired PATCO members who remained on strike and banned them from being rehired. He then began replacing them with a combination of about 3,000 supervisors, 2,000 non-striking air traffic controllers, and 900 military controllers. The FAA began hiring new air traffic controller applicants on August 17th, many of whom would later form a new union, the National Air Traffic Controllers Association. So as we can see, the history has shown that striking as a member of the government, striking as an air traffic controller, and I would assume this even extends to TSA workers, has not necessarily been the most effective, especially with the current administration, who is very unruly, who is very uncanny. I have a feeling that given their unreasonableness, they would be completely willing of repeating the history that Ronald Reagan has left behind. But I wanted to leave the question up to you guys. What do you guys think? Do you think that the workers should still go on strike? That even if this history shows that the government has the power to completely dismantle and discourage striking, that they should still make that effort to try to change their condition? Or do you think that they should wait it out and do what they can afford to do now during the strike to make ends meet, such that they do not have to repeat the fatal history of the workers within the PATCO union? But thank you guys for tuning into this video. Like, comment, and subscribe if you would like to see more, and I will see you in the next one.